Welcome. Be sure to like and subscribe for more scary stories, or I will come for you. If anyone would like early access to my latest stories and an ad-free listening experience, consider becoming one of the Curator's disciples. The link is in the description below. Story number 1, The Mailman, by the Curator. I've never been much of a writer, so forgive me if this comes off a bit rough. I just needed to get this off my chest, and where better than here, right? It's not like I can tell anyone in real life about this stuff. My story starts in a pretty average city in the USA. I won't say which one because, well, I've got enough problems as it is. Anyway, I used to be someone you could call a hero. At least that's what people said. I was an army bomb defuser stationed in Afghanistan. It was a tough gig, but I was good at it. I liked the challenge, and I liked knowing that I was saving lives. I guess I should start from the beginning. My name is Adam, but most people know me as the Mailman now. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest. My parents were hard-working folks. My dad was a mechanic, and my mom worked as a nurse. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was enough. From a young age, I was fascinated by how things worked. I'd spend hours in my dad's garage, watching him fix cars and learning everything I could. By the time I was 10, I could take apart an engine and put it back together. My mom always said I had a gift, that I was meant to do something great. I believed her. School wasn't my favorite place. I was smart, but I didn't fit in. I was always more interested in figuring out how things worked than in playing sports or hanging out with friends. I had a few close buddies, but mostly I kept to myself. I was the kid who always had some project going on, tinkering with electronics or building models. High school was tough. I wasn't the popular kid, and I got picked on a lot, but I didn't let it bother me too much. I knew I was different, and I was okay with that. I focused on my studies and spent most of my time in the shop class, working on machines and learning everything I could about engineering. My grades were good enough to get me into a decent college, but I knew my family couldn't afford it. That's when I started thinking about the military. It seemed like a good way to get an education and do something meaningful with my life. Plus, I had always wanted to serve my country. When I turned 18, I enlisted in the army. My parents were proud but worried. My mom didn't want to see her baby go off to war, but she knew it was what I wanted. I went through basic training and excelled in everything they threw at me. I was disciplined, focused, and eager to learn. I quickly found my calling in the explosive ordnance disposal unit. It was the perfect fit for someone with my skills and interests. Defusing bombs was like solving puzzles, and I was good at it. I rose through the ranks quickly, earning the respect of my peers and superiors. My first deployment was to Afghanistan. It was a whole different world out there. The heat, the sand, the constant threat of danger. It was a lot to handle. But I thrived under pressure. I defused countless IEDs, saving lives and making a difference. It was hard work, but it was also incredibly rewarding. I made some close friends in my unit. We were like a family, looking out for each other and sharing the burden of war. There were close calls, of course, times when I wasn't sure if I'd make it back. But we always managed to pull through. Things changed one day during a routine mission. I was called in to defuse an IED. It was hidden under a pile of rubble, and it was my job to make sure it didn't go off. I did everything by the book, but sometimes that doesn't matter. The bomb went off, and I was thrown back by the blast. I survived, but I wasn't the same. My leg was messed up pretty bad, and they decided I wasn't fit for duty anymore. I was flown back to the States for medical treatment. The doctors did their best, but my leg was never the same. I went through months of rehab, trying to regain my strength and mobility. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't pass the physical fitness tests required to stay in the EOD unit. That's when I got the news. I was being discharged, deemed unfit for duty. It felt like a betrayal. I had given everything for my country, and now they were casting me aside. My superiors said it was for my own good, that I needed to focus on my recovery. But I knew better. They just didn't want to deal with a wounded soldier. I was pissed. I gave everything for my country, and this is how they repay me. I was sent home, dishonorably discharged. They said I was a liability. They said I was done. I couldn't believe it. The army was my life, and now it was gone. I spent months stewing in my anger. I blamed my superiors for my discharge. I knew they were the ones who pushed for it. I decided to take matters into my own hands. Using my skills, I started building bombs. Not just any bombs, but mail bombs. I knew how to make them small, but deadly. It gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction. My first target was Captain Henderson. He was the one who gave the final order for my discharge. I started by watching him, learning his routine. He lived in a suburban neighborhood, had a wife and 2 kids. He was the perfect family man, but to me, he was just the first on my list. I built a small bomb using a modified pipe bomb design, packed with nails and ball bearings for maximum damage. I placed it inside a package that looked like it came from a reputable company. It was a classic mail bomb, simple yet effective. I sent it to his home, timing it to arrive on a day when I knew he'd be the one to open the mail. When the news broke about the explosion, it was all over the local channels. The blast killed him instantly and severely injured his wife. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was overshadowed by my satisfaction. 1 down, 2 to go. My next target was Colonel Matthews. He was a hard one to get close to because he always had security around him. I decided to get creative. I found out he was a big fan of fishing and regularly received packages from a fishing gear company. I replicated one of their packages and hid a small but powerful explosive inside. It was a bit more sophisticated, using a pressure trigger that would go off when he opened the box. I waited for the right moment, and sure enough, he opened the package at his office, thinking it was some new fishing gear. The explosion was contained enough to kill him, but not too big to draw massive attention. It was clean and precise, just like I planned. The last one, General Ross, was the toughest. He had layers of security and was always on the move. I had to be very patient and smart about this one. I decided to send him a letter bomb, something that looked like official documents from the Department of Defense. The bomb was small, hidden within the papers, and rigged to explode when the letter was fully opened. This one was the riskiest. I mailed it to his home address, where I knew he reviewed his personal mail. I watched from a distance as he took the envelope inside. The explosion that followed was deafening. The blast tore through his study, killing him instantly. With my revenge complete, I didn't know what to do next. The thrill of the hunt and the satisfaction of a job well done were addictive. I found myself drifting into the darker corners of the internet. That's where I discovered the dark web and the people who needed my unique set of skills. I started small, taking contracts to build bombs for various clients. The anonymity of the dark web was perfect for someone like me. I became known as the Mailman, delivering death to whoever could pay my price. My bombs were in high demand, and I started making a lot of money. It felt good to be in control again. Then came the job that changed everything. A client reached out to me with a high-paying contract. They needed a bomb with enough C4 to take out the foundations of a high-rise building. The money was too good to pass up, so I took it. I spent weeks designing and building the bomb. It was one of my best works, if not the best. The client was specific about the delivery and the timing. I didn't ask questions. I just did my job. When the bomb went off, it was all over the news. The target was an FBI headquarters, and the explosion caused massive destruction and loss of life. That's when it hit me. I had gone too far. The scale of the destruction and the attention it brought was something I couldn't handle. I decided it was time to lay low for a while. I moved to a different city, changed my appearance, and tried to blend in. Now, I'm just trying to stay under the radar. I've stopped taking contracts, at least for now. The authorities are looking for me, and the dark web is buzzing with rumors about the Mailman. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I need to keep a low profile until the heat dies down. It's not easy, but it's the only option I have. Every time I see a police car or hear a siren, my heart races. I can't afford to make any mistakes. Living in hiding isn't glamorous. I stay in cheap motels and move frequently. I use cash for everything, avoiding anything that could be traced back to me. I've changed my appearance, dyed my hair, grew a beard, and even got a few tattoos to look different. It's a lonely existence, but it's the price I have to pay for my choices. One day, while laying low in a rundown motel, I got a message from an old contact. Someone from my army days. He said he knew what I'd been up to and that he had a proposition for me. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. We met in a secluded park, far from prying eyes. He was a former intelligence officer, someone I trusted back in the day. He laid out his plan. He needed someone with my skills for a job, but this time it was for a cause he believed in. It wasn't about money, it was about sending a message. I was skeptical, but intrigued. He told me about a corrupt corporation involved in illegal arms deals and human trafficking. They were untouchable by the law due to their connections and money. He wanted to bring them down, and he needed me to make it happen. I agreed to help, but under strict conditions. I wanted to ensure this wasn't another FBI headquarters situation. We spent weeks gathering intel and planning the operation. My target was the corporation's main office, a heavily guarded fortress in the heart of the city. I designed a bomb that was powerful but precise, meant to take out their servers and disrupt their operations without causing mass casualties. It was a different kind of challenge, but it felt good to be working towards something that might make a real difference. The day of the operation was tense. My contact and his team provided the distraction needed to get me close to the building. This was the most ambitious and dangerous contract I had ever taken. It required precision, careful planning, and flawless execution. My reputation as the mailman depended on it, and so did my survival. Here's how it all went down. The client had provided a detailed layout of the main office, including security protocols, employee schedules, and the building's structural blueprints. I studied these documents meticulously, identifying weak points and potential entry points. The key to success was timing and stealth. The first step was acquiring the necessary materials without raising suspicion. I used a network of trusted suppliers on the dark web to procure C4 explosives, detonators, and other components. Each transaction was conducted using encrypted communications and cryptocurrency to ensure anonymity. Once I had everything I needed, I set up a workshop in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Constructing the bomb was a painstaking process. I designed it to be as compact as possible, easy to transport, but with enough power to bring down the building's foundations. The C4 was molded into blocks and wired with electronic detonators. I used a pressure cooker to house the explosives, which provided a sturdy container and helped to avoid suspicion during transportation. Next, I programmed the detonators. This part required absolute precision. I set up a timer mechanism that would allow the bomb to be armed and disarmed remotely. The plan was to have it triggered by a call from a burner phone, ensuring I could detonate it at the exact moment needed. Before executing the plan, I conducted a thorough reconnaissance of the office building. I spent several days observing the security measures, noting the comings and goings of employees, and identifying the best time to plant the bomb. I disguised myself as a delivery driver to blend in, ensuring I wouldn't attract attention. On the night of the operation, I donned a maintenance worker's uniform and carried a toolbox containing the bomb. I arrived at the building during the late shift change, when security was less stringent. With my forged ID badge and knowledge of the building's layout, I navigated my way to the basement. Once in the basement, I located the structural supports identified in the blueprints. These were the key points that, when destroyed, would bring the building down. I placed the pressure cooker bomb in a concealed area near the supports, securing it with industrial adhesive. I connected the detonators and tested the signal strength of the remote trigger. Everything was in place. I left the basement, making sure to avoid the security cameras and any patrolling guards. Exiting the building, I felt a mix of adrenaline and anxiety. The hardest part was over, but the most dangerous moment was yet to come. I retreated to a safe distance and waited. The timer was set to allow for a clear window of escape and to ensure the building was not occupied when the bomb went off. I watched from a vantage point with a clear line of sight to the office building. As the designated time approached, I made the call to the burner phone connected to the bomb's detonator. My heart pounded as I pressed the call button. There was a brief pause, and then a deafening explosion ripped through the night. The ground shook as the blast tore through the building's foundations. Flames and debris shot into the sky, and the structure began to collapse in on itself. The roar of destruction was punctuated by the blaring of alarms and the shouts of people in panic. Emergency responders swarmed the area, and news of the bombing spread like wildfire. The media coverage was intense, with headlines declaring it one of the most devastating attacks on U.S. soil. The aftermath was chaotic. The corporation was scrambling, and the authorities were clueless. My contacts team used the opportunity to expose the illegal activities, and the public outcry was immense. It was a small victory, but it felt like redemption for the path I had taken. I knew it wasn't over. The corporation had powerful enemies, and they would be looking for those responsible. I had to keep moving, staying one step ahead, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had done something right. I decided to take another break from contracts, laying low and waiting for the heat to die down. It's a dangerous game, and I know I'm walking a fine line. But sometimes, you have to take risks to make a difference. I'm not sure what the future holds. Maybe I'll keep helping my contact with his missions, or maybe I'll disappear for good. All I know is that for now, I need to stay hidden and let things settle. I'll share more of my story when the time is right. Until then, stay safe and keep an eye out. You never know who might be watching. Story number 2. The Cannibal's Cookbook by the Curator. I never thought I'd be where I am today. I'm a successful businessman, a well-respected figure in New York City's high society. But behind closed doors, I have a secret, a dark, twisted secret that would shock anyone who knows me. I'm not proud of it, but it's become a part of who I am. Let me start from the beginning. Growing up, I wasn't like the other kids. I was born into a wealthy family, with all the privileges and expectations that come with it. My father was a prominent lawyer, and my mother was a socialite, always hosting extravagant parties. From a young age, I was groomed to follow in my father's footsteps, to uphold the family name and legacy. But I was different. While other kids were playing sports or video games, I was more interested in dissecting animals I found in the woods or experimenting with my chemistry set. My parents thought I was just curious, a budding scientist, but there was something darker at play. I was fascinated by the inner workings of living things, the complexity of life and death. When I went to college, I studied biology, hoping to satisfy my curiosity in a more socially acceptable way. I excelled academically, but my fascination with the macabre never waned. I found myself drawn to the darker corners of the internet, exploring forums and chat rooms where others shared my morbid interests. After college, I joined my father's law firm, quickly rising through the ranks. I was good at my job, and my success earned me a lot of respect. But the corporate world never fulfilled me. I felt like I was living a lie, pretending to be something I wasn't. My true passions lay hidden, buried beneath layers of societal expectations and moral constraints. My position afforded me access to the elite circles of New York City. I attended exclusive parties, rubbed shoulders with celebrities and billionaires. It was at one of these events that my life changed forever. It was an ordinary Thursday night when I received the invitation, a sleek black envelope with no return address. Inside was an invitation to an exclusive networking event, something unlike anything I'd ever attended. The invite mentioned a unique culinary experience and requested that I sign a non-disclosure agreement before attending. I thought it was strange, but in my world, exclusivity is everything, and I was intrigued. I arrived at the venue, a grand mansion in the heart of the city. The security was tight, and I had to show my ID and the signed NDA before being allowed in. The interior was luxurious, with opulent decorations and a crowd of well-dressed individuals. I mingled, chatted with a few familiar faces, and tried to get a sense of what made this event so special. After an hour of networking, we were guided to a large dining room. The centerpiece was a massive table adorned with an array of exotic dishes. At first, it seemed like an extravagant dinner party, but then the host made an announcement that changed everything. The room fell silent as the host, a tall man with a commanding presence, stepped forward. He wore a black suit, impeccably tailored, and exuded an air of authority. He gestured for everyone to gather around a large stainless steel table at the center of the room. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, a palpable excitement that hung in the air. On the table lay a man, bound and gagged, his eyes wide with terror. His struggles were futile. The ropes securing him were tight and unyielding. The host began to speak, his voice calm and steady, explaining that the evening's entertainment would be a live demonstration of the culinary arts. He emphasized the importance of discretion, reminding everyone that what happened here must never leave the room. The host introduced the chef, a renowned culinary expert whose identity was shrouded in mystery. The chef stepped forward, wearing a pristine white apron and carrying a set of finely sharpened knives. He laid them out with meticulous precision, each one gleaming under the bright lights. The chef started by addressing the crowd, explaining that the key to a perfect meal was preparation and attention to detail. He spoke with a calm, almost soothing voice, describing the process as if it were a mundane cooking class. He began by making an incision along the man's chest, just deep enough to draw blood, but not cause immediate death. The crowd watched in rapt attention, some with fascination, others with a morbid curiosity. The man's muffled cries echoed through the room as the chef worked, peeling back the skin to reveal the muscles beneath. The host reassured the crowd that the man had been chosen specifically for this event, and that he had no family or friends who would miss him. This revelation seemed to put some of the guests at ease, allowing them to focus more on the culinary spectacle unfolding before them. With the chest cavity open, the chef began to remove the ribs, one by one, with a bone saw. Each rib was carefully placed on a separate tray, destined to be roasted and served later. The chef's movements were methodical and precise, a testament to his skill and experience. The room was filled with the sounds of sawing and the occasional gasp from the audience, who were both horrified and mesmerized by the scene. The chef then moved on to the organs, starting with the liver. He explained its culinary value, describing the rich, buttery flavor that it would bring to the meal. He carefully removed the liver and placed it in a pan, ready to be seared to perfection. Next, he harvested the kidneys, heart, and other organs, each one handled with the utmost care and placed in their respective pans. The chef continued his work, moving to the thighs. He explained that the muscles in the thighs were particularly tender and flavorful. He made precise cuts, extracting the meat and setting it aside for marinating. The man's body was now a canvas, each cut and incision made with the intention of creating a masterpiece. The blood was collected in a large bowl, destined to be used in a sauce that would accompany the main course. The chef described the process of reducing the blood with red wine and spices, creating a rich and savory sauce that would enhance the flavors of the meat. The crowd listened intently, their initial shock giving way to a strange fascination with the culinary process. Once the initial preparations were complete, the chef moved the trays to the kitchen, where his assistants began to cook the meat. The room was filled with the intoxicating aroma of searing flesh, a scent that mingled with the anticipation of the crowd. The chef continued to explain each step, describing how the liver would be seared with garlic and onions, the thighs marinated and roasted, and the ribs slow-cooked to perfection. The cooking process took several hours, during which the guests mingled and discussed what they had witnessed. Some expressed their curiosity about the taste, while others speculated about the next course. The host ensured that everyone was comfortable, providing drinks and light appetizers to keep the guests entertained. During the party, I overheard a conversation about a rare book known as the Cannibal's Cookbook. It was said to be a comprehensive guide on how to cook every part of a human, bound in human skin and written in the blood of its victims. The book was a prized possession among those in the know, a holy grail for cannibals. My interest was piqued. I wanted to know more about this book, to understand the full extent of this dark culinary world. I asked around, but information was scarce. It seemed that only the most elite had access to it, and acquiring it was no easy task. Finally, the meal was ready. The chef presented each dish with a flourish, describing the flavors and textures in detail. The liver was served as an appetizer, its rich flavor complemented by a simple salad. The thighs were the main course, marinated and roasted to perfection, served with a side of roasted vegetables and a blood sauce. The ribs were the highlight, tender and juicy, falling off the bone with each bite. The guests ate in silence, savoring each bite. The taste was unlike anything they had ever experienced. a combination of rich, savory flavors that left them craving more. The host and chef watched with satisfaction, knowing that they had provided a meal that would be remembered for a lifetime. As the evening came to an end, the guests left one by one, each one sworn to secrecy. The host and chef cleaned up, erasing any evidence of what had transpired. The man's remains were disposed of, and the room was restored to its pristine condition. The event had been a success, a perfect blend of horror and culinary artistry. I felt a mix of guilt and fascination. How could something so wrong taste so good? I looked around and saw that everyone else seemed to share my curiosity. They were all discussing the experience, talking about flavors and textures, as if they were at a wine tasting. It was surreal. After the party, I became obsessed with finding the Cannibal's cookbook. I scoured the dark web, looking for any clues or leads. I contacted rare book dealers, hoping they might have information. Most of them thought I was crazy, but a few hinted that they had heard of such a book. Months passed, and I finally got a lead. An anonymous seller on the dark web claimed to have the book and was willing to auction it off. The starting bid was astronomical, but I didn't care. I had to have it. The bidding war was intense, with high net worth individuals from around the world vying for the prize. In the end, I placed a bid of $1 million and won the auction. When the book arrived, I was both excited and nervous. The cover was indeed bound in human skin, and the pages were a deep red, clearly written in blood. It was a detailed guide with recipes for every part of the human body. The instructions were meticulous, describing how to prepare and cook each part to perfection. I spent hours reading the book, fascinated by the knowledge it contained. It was both horrifying and enthralling. I couldn't believe that such a thing existed, and yet here it was, in my hands. I knew I had crossed a line, but I couldn't stop. The allure of the forbidden was too strong. I knew I had to try the recipes. The book was too detailed, too enticing to resist. I found my first victim, a homeless man who wouldn't be missed. I brought him to my apartment, tied him up, and followed the instructions in the book. I prepared a meal using his flesh, following the recipe to the letter. The result was extraordinary. The flavors were rich and complex, unlike anything I had ever tasted. I felt a sense of accomplishment, a twisted pride in my culinary skills. I knew then that this was my new passion, my secret indulgence. Over the next few months, I continued to use the cookbook. I selected victims carefully, always ensuring they wouldn't be missed. I perfected my techniques, becoming more confident and skilled with each meal. The book became my Bible, guiding me in my dark culinary journey. I knew I had to be careful. One mistake could expose me and ruin everything I had built. I took every precaution, making sure there was no evidence left behind. My obsession grew, and I found myself thinking about my next meal constantly. And that brings us to today. I'm sitting in my living room, telling this story to you, a young man tied up in front of me. You're probably wondering why you're here, why I'm telling you all this. The truth is, you're about to become my next meal. You should feel so privileged. You're not just any victim. You're the culmination of my journey, the ultimate expression of my dark passion. I know it's hard to understand, but this is who I am now. The book was thought to be lost, but it found its way to me, and I'm not letting go. This is my story, and it's far from over. Once I finish with you, I'll continue my culinary journey, always searching for the next perfect meal. I've laid out my tools on a nearby table, a selection of knives, a bone saw, and various other instruments I've collected over the years. Each one has a specific purpose, each one crucial to the process. The Cannibal's cookbook lies open on the counter, the pages worn from use, stained with memories of past meals. I start by making sure you're secure, double-checking the ropes that bind you. I can't have you moving around once the process begins. The first cut is always the hardest, both physically and mentally. I take a deep breath, steadying my hand, and begin. The knife slices through your skin with ease, blood welling up around the blade. I make a long incision from your sternum to your pelvis, peeling back the skin to expose the muscle beneath. You scream, but the gag muffles the sound. I've soundproofed the room, just in case. Next, I use the bone saw to carefully remove your ribs, one by one. This part requires precision. The book emphasizes the importance of clean cuts, and I follow its instructions to the letter. The ribs will be roasted later, a delicacy that's always a highlight of the meal. With your chest cavity open, I can see your organs, each one a potential ingredient. The heart, the liver, the kidneys, they all have their place in the cookbook's recipes. I start with the liver, carefully removing it and setting it aside. It will be seared and served as an appetizer. I move on to the thighs, slicing through the muscle to harvest the tender cuts of meat. The legs are always a challenge, but I've perfected my technique over time. The muscle fibers are strong, but with the right knife and the right angle, they yield to my blade. The blood flows freely now, pooling on the floor. I catch as much of it as I can in a large bowl. The cookbook has several recipes that call for fresh blood, and I don't want to waste a drop. It will be used to create a rich, savory sauce to accompany the main course. Once the initial preparation is done, I move you to the kitchen. The smell of raw meat fills the air, a scent I've come to associate with anticipation and hunger. I wash my hands thoroughly, making sure there's no contamination. Cleanliness is crucial in this process, and I take it very seriously. The kitchen is my sanctuary, a place where I can focus on the art of cooking. I've already laid out my ingredients, carefully selected to complement the flavors of the human flesh. Fresh herbs, spices, and vegetables, everything has been prepared with precision. I start by searing the liver in a hot pan, adding garlic and onions for flavor. The smell is intoxicating, rich, and savory. Once it's browned on all sides, I deglaze the pan with a splash of red wine, letting the flavors meld together. The liver will be served with a simple salad, a light appetizer to begin the meal. Next, I prepare the thighs. I marinate them in a mixture of olive oil, lemon juice, and rosemary, letting the flavors penetrate the meat. After marinating, I sear them in a hot pan, creating a crispy crust on the outside while keeping the inside tender and juicy. The thighs will be the main course, served with roasted vegetables and a blood sauce. The ribs are next. I rub them with a blend of spices, including paprika, cumin, and brown sugar. They're then placed in the oven, slow cooked to perfection. The meat will be tender, falling off the bone, a true delicacy. As everything cooks, I prepare the blood sauce. I reduce the blood with red wine, garlic, and rosemary, creating a thick, rich sauce that will enhance the flavors of the meat. It's a process that requires patience and precision. Hours later, the meal is ready. I sit at my dining table, looking at the feast I've prepared. It's beautiful. I take a bite, savoring the rich flavors and tender texture. The cookbook was right. It's an unparalleled culinary experience. As I eat, I think about the future. This isn't the end. It's just another step in my journey. I'll continue to use the cookbook, continue to perfect my craft. There are so many recipes left to try, so many flavors to explore. I know I'm walking a dangerous path, but I can't stop. Finally, the ribs, they're tender and juicy, the meat falling off the bone with each bite. The spices create a perfect balance of heat and sweetness, a true testament to the cookbook's recipes. The thighs are next, perfectly cooked and bursting with flavor. The roasted vegetables add a nice contrast, their sweetness balancing the savory meat. The blood sauce ties everything together, adding a depth of flavor that's both rich and complex. I finish my meal and clean up, erasing any evidence of what happened. I sit back and reflect on my journey, from a curious bystander at an exclusive party to a master of forbidden cuisine. It's been a vibe, but I wouldn't change a thing. This is who I am, and I've accepted that. The Cannibal's cookbook has become my most prized possession. I know it's only a matter of time before someone starts looking for the missing people, before the authorities start to piece things together. But until then, I'll continue my work, perfecting my skills and exploring the dark depths of human flavor. This is the Curator. I hope you've enjoyed today's scary stories. Until next time.